The News from Lake Wobegon podcast is supported by Cheerios. As part of a heart-healthy diet, the oats in Cheerios can help naturally lower cholesterol. Cheerios, good for the heart.
Well, it's been a quiet week in Lake Wobegon, my hometown, out on the prairie. It's been cool and a little bit rainy there, so everybody's in a little better disposition than they were a week ago, and there's a little more hope for the corn crop now. And there was a wedding last weekend in Lake Wobegon, so that gave everybody a lot to talk about for all of the week, especially at the beauty parlor last Saturday morning, which is really the center of news and information in our town, is Luann Magadance's Bon Marché beauty parlor there on the street between Skoglund's Five and Dime and the hardware store. Sits in there, looks much the same as it has for the last 30 years, and so do most of Luann's clients, which is Luann's job, after all, is preservation. Preservation against constant deterioration and erosion, trying to keep every woman in town looking 53 years old until they finally die, and then going down to the funeral home and giving them their eternal permanent and sending them off. It was Joanne Anderson's wedding. She came back from Concordia. She graduated from college in nursing in the spring, and she is marrying a man named Johannesson. He's not from Lake Wobegon. We didn't know much about him until this last week, and then we were sorry we did. But so her name is now going to be Joanne Johannesson, which kind of has a nice ring to it. She actually came into the beauty parlor last Saturday morning to get her hair done. As I say, it hasn't changed all that much. You walk in the front door, and there's a little waiting area up at the front, and then there are the hair dryers along the left wall with those sort of beehive cones there on the back of the chairs, and the sinks for washing the hair are in back, and the recliner chairs and the styling chairs are over on the right, and there's the pot of coffee that's always on and sort of tastes like it there in the waiting area. You have 2 cups of that, you may not need a permanent, you know. Luann has her styling chair there, and she has pictures of all of her children stuck into the edge of the mirror, and the daughter who married the periodontist, and all their beautiful children with their perfect teeth. And she has a boy down in Oklahoma, has the largest wholesale flower operation in Oklahoma, 60,000 poinsettias he did last year. 60,000. She's told that to everybody in town at least twice. And then there's one picture of her boy who is still trying to find himself. He was trying to find himself in Minneapolis, and now he's trying to find himself in Seattle, Washington. He's sort of tracking himself across the country. There's all of her children there. She'd be glad to talk about any of them, would rather talk about some than others, but that's all right. It was busy last Saturday morning, and her sister Lois had to come in and help her wash hair and do some coloring. They had a crowd in there by 9 o'clock in the morning. Arlene and Irene Bunsen, they have an appointment every Saturday morning to have their hair done. Irene came in with a little picture. She said to Luann, she said, "Could you do me like this?" And it was a picture of Lauren Bacall, who was receiving an award of some sort. Well, Luann said, "I'm sure I could, but I don't know about this morning. I've got a bride coming in an hour and some bridesmaids later in the morning." Well, Irene said, "We're going off to Norway on a trip this summer, and I just would rather not take, hairspray along with me. I'm just looking for something a little simpler, kind of looser." "Well, we'll see what we can do," Luann said. And then in came Myrtle, who was pushing 80 and pushing it very hard, and some believe is pulling 80, and who still has her hair colored raven black. Luann has been trying to get her to streak it a little bit so she doesn't look like Batgirl, but Myrtle sticks with black, and then pretty soon Eloise was in, and Evelyn, and the place was absolutely crowded with people, and a couple of them getting their hair washed, and Myrtle was up on her back getting her black coloring put in. Everything was absolutely busy. People talking about their gardens and wondering why they put in so much this year. It's way too much work, and ridiculous the number of tomatoes they put in, and talking about their children and which children have come back to visit their parents. You know, it's always a painful topic, the abandonment of parents by their children. Luann said to Arlene, who was sitting up in the chair, she said, so how is Barbara Ann? I haven't seen Barbara Ann and Bill for a while. Wondering, of course, if they're still together. There have been stories about them breaking up. Well, Arlene said, no, they haven't been back for a while. Oh, I see. So they're still in Chicago, though. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're still in Chicago. I see. So they keep pretty busy. Yeah, they keep pretty busy. She didn't want to come right out and ask. She was hoping for a little more information. Arlene said, so how's Everett out in Seattle? How's he doing? Well, Luann said, he's doing all right. He's got a job. She didn't say what kind of job, but if you have a child who is trying to find himself, you are grateful if he's able to hold down a full-time position, no matter what it may be. I sat in there and we're working away at the hair and the smell of those old sweet chemicals. When suddenly the bell dinged on the door and in came Cliff from the mercantile. Mostly Luann's clientele is almost all women, but a few men have been sneaking in once in a while because they want a little more stylish cut than what they can get from Jim the barber, who takes a basically utilitarian Lutheran view of hair. Hair is supposed to be a sign of humility, basically. It's learned his barbering at Fort Sill, I believe, and so you tell him what you want, and you tell him not too short on the sides, he's still going to shave it about half the way up above the ears. Cliff came in. Of course, the moment Cliff appeared, everybody was silent. Conversation came to an end. Luann got Cliff right into the chair so they'd be free to talk. She went to work on Cliff a little bit. He has an unusual hairstyle. It kind of begins at the back of his neck, and the hair in the back of his head is allowed to grow very, very long so it can be swooshed up and around in the front and cover the bald spot. The part on his hair is on the back of his neck. She cut off a little fringe around the edges and she trimmed the hair in his ears and got done with him. Nobody said a word. He paid up. He left. And the moment he walked out the door, Gladys said, has anybody seen the groom? Has he shown up yet? Oh, yes, Lois said. She was washing Irene's hair. But oh, yes, she had seen the groom. He came to town on Wednesday. Oh, she said, I guess he's smart enough. He graduated from college. He's been admitted to graduate school. That's what they said. So somebody must have some hopes for him. Comes driving into town the Wednesday before his wedding in a fancy new red convertible and wearing fancy clothes. You just wonder what those two are going to do for money. It's not the sort of thing I would think a person ought to be doing the week before you set out to start a family, is spend that kind of money on that kind of car. And those shoes, they were foreign shoes, you could tell to look at them. And that shirt that he was wearing, he didn't get that out of any catalog, I'll tell you. Oh, the man is lavish. Lavish indeed. It just made me worry for Joanne to look at him. And he was kind of stuck up. A lot of people said so. I wasn't the only one. A lot of people said he was kind of smirky. He gave people smirky looks. I don't know what he's trying to make up for. Trying to make up for something. I don't know. I'd accept it more if he were good looking, but he wasn't. Got this big bulbous nose on him, looks like a rutabaga. Terrible, terrible haircut. Not good looking at all. You just hope they don't have daughters. I just hope they don't, because, so often a child inherits the characteristics of the parent of the other gender. And you just think girls who'd go through life with a nose like that on them wouldn't stand a chance. No. If he'd been good looking, I could have forgiven him some of it, but he wouldn't. I don't know. And just that moment, the door dinged, and who should come down the stairs but Joanne. Joanne, the bride. She came in and she walked down, and Luann took her by the hand, and she said, "Joanne, you look so beautiful. You look just like a bride ought to look on the morning of her wedding." Joanne looked as if she had slept outdoors all night. She looked as if she'd slept outdoors on rocks, as if she'd dreamed of unspeakable things. "You look just lovely." Joanne said, "Do you think my hair is long enough to set it in a chignon and tie it up in a bun and back?" "Oh," Luann said, "that's what I'm here for, honey. If your hair isn't long enough, we'll find a way. Let me wash it for you." And she got her in the chair and she washed her beautiful strawberry blonde hair. And she told her story. She said, on my wedding day, I did my own hair. And I'd seen a picture in a magazine of Grace Kelly. And she had the most beautiful hair. I just looked at it for the longest time, and she wore it in a French roll. And I thought, that's what I want to have. And so I constructed this French roll. And I used a toilet roll as a foundation for it. And I wrapped the hair around it, and I pinned it up tight, or thought I had. But I had left a little bit of toilet paper on the roll. And so as I was coming down the aisle, I could feel this thing slipping. And I felt it bouncing on my back, and then it was halfway down my back. I looked like Medusa with snakes coming out of my hair. My mother turned, she saw me, she just stepped right up there and she pulled all the pins out of my hair so that it all just hung down there. I was crying the whole time, all through my wedding. Myrtle had gotten a wave and she got back in the styling chair. And Gladys got ready for her styling. She said, she said, that wave that you gave me the last time, she said, I don't know, it's just too much trouble for me to take care of. I think I'd rather have it back the way it used to be. The way it used to be for Gladys is basically the way Myrtle's hair looks, which is also the way Irene's hair looks. It's small-town helmet hair. It's a little bit of teasing in back and back combing and enough hairspray for structure. You can sleep on it and never mess it at all. It's what they all go back to in that town. So Lois got to work on the helmet hair, and then Joanne got her hair dried and she sat in the styling chair and she started to cry, and everybody was quiet. She started to weep so beautifully. She said, I'm sorry. Luann stood there, gave her a Kleenex. She rubbed the side of her head. She massaged her neck. She said, that's all right, honey. You're all right. She sat there and she cried on the morning of her wedding day. The tears of a bride are sacred. And every woman in the beauty parlor in the Bon Marché that morning knew what those tears were about. You have this beautiful dream, and you dream it, and then some young man comes along who seems to fit into that dream, and so you take him in as a kind of minority stockholder. And you bring him in and you coach him and you bring him along. And the closer you come to the day of your wedding, the less you know him. You know him less and less until it starts to seem like an arranged marriage. It starts to seem like a blind date. It starts to seem like somebody you met just this moment out of an ad in a magazine. Starts to seem like some person you just picked up off the street. You have no idea who this person is or what will become of this whatsoever. You're about to take a step off a cliff and you have no idea what will come out, what your life will be like, if this is going to be some horrible comedy, if this is going to be just a tragedy, just a big joke, or what it's going to be. And your children, what will become of them? Will they be reasonably normal? Or will their lives be some sort of soap opera? And every night you'll half expect the phone to ring and some horrible revelation. You go into the beauty parlor every Saturday morning and you'll open the pages of the National Enquirer and half expect to see them in there someplace. Man gives birth to 6-pound child. Woman marries alien and has honeymoon on Jupiter. You have no idea how this will ever come out. They sat and they listened to this bride weeping. And if she had said, "Please help me, I can't do this," they would have helped her. They would have driven her away to some safe place. And maybe they should have anyway, but she didn't say. She dried her tears, and Luann did her hair. And she built up that beautiful little chignon on the back, that little bun on a foundation of cotton balls. She made a beautiful bun, and she stood up at last, and they gathered round her to admire it, her beautiful strawberry blonde hair on the morning of her wedding. All of the old women and women of Lake Wobegon stood around her, these old oracles and priestesses stood around the young maiden, and they touched her, knowing what they know, but nonetheless wishing her well. That's the news from Lake Wobegon, where all the women are strong, all the men are good looking, all the children are above average.
The News from Lake Wobegon podcast is supported by Cheerios. As part of a heart-healthy diet, the oats in Cheerios can help naturally lower cholesterol. Cheerios, good for the heart.